Hello everyone, so you've probably clicked on this video because of a single thought that's been lurking in your head, and it's why isn't my YouTube automation cash cow channel growing? So have no fear, because in this video I'm going to teach you how to diagnose what's wrong with your channel so that you can get your channel to grow. And so the topic of this video is what to do when your YouTube automation channel isn't growing. So let's get started. So the first thing I always do when I analyze channels is that you have to have the mentality of thinking of YouTube as a tiered system. And the first part of that tier, or that first barrier that you have to break, is understanding impressions. With impressions, are your videos at least getting impressions? Because if they are getting impressions, then that means you're creating searchable content. You're basically fulfilling the needs of people on YouTube. And with impressions, that's the first tier of the YouTube tiered system, in which if you're not getting impressions on your videos, then there's no reason why you should be focusing on click-through rate. Honestly, there may not even be a reason why you should be focusing on the content of your video, So the second tier of how to think of YouTube as a tiered system is the click-through rate. So once you've got impressions down, the next tier that you have to kind of overcome, or the next obstacle you have to overcome, is click-through rate. And then the last tier or obstacle that you have to overcome is average viewer duration. So with this tiered mentality of thinking about YouTube, this upside down pyramid, which I've talked about in multiple of my other videos, this is a very, very important concept to understand when it comes to posting videos on YouTube. Notice how impressions is the top layer, click-through rate is the next layer, then you get views, and then the next layer is average viewer duration, and then lastly is the watch time from impressions in hours. The only three metrics of this upside down pyramid that you can control or you actually have an effect on is impressions, click-through rate, and then average viewer duration. So let me break this down for you in terms of impressions. Okay, so where do impressions come from when you think about YouTube? Impressions, they come from, so I'm going to delete this. Impressions come from your keywords in your title and description, and not really notice how I don't really say tags, just because I don't really believe in tags. I've done lots of research. Tags are very minuscule when it comes to actually having an SEO effect on your videos, but having keywords in your title and your description are 100 times more important than having keywords in your tags, and that leads to impressions. So if you're getting impressions on your videos, that means you're choosing correct keywords, you're choosing actual searchable keywords in your title and description. So when you look at this upside down graph, if this number is like 0% or less than, I don't have a hard number to kind of give you, but if you're not getting any recommendations from YouTube recommending your content, then the problem is impressions. Okay? If you're not getting enough impressions, you can't say that the problem is your click-through rate, nor can you say that the problem is your average viewer duration. If you're not getting impressions, you need to rethink what keywords are you using in your title? What keywords are you using in your description? Are you actually creating content that people are searching for? So once you have impressions down, the next tier that you have to overcome is click-through rate. And click-through rate, what does that derive from? That comes from your title and thumbnail. So as I said before, if you've got a good amount of impressions, then the next problem that you have to tackle is your click-through rate. Is your click-through rate a reasonable click-through rate? And what I like to aim for is as close to or over 10% click-through rate. But even in this example here, 4.9%, for the click-through rate is what I would be focusing on for this specific upside down triangle quote-unquote problem. And the reason why is because the click-through rate's a little subpar. Ideally, I want it to be over 7%, over 10%. And this one here is at 4.9%. This channel is getting impressions. However, the click-through rate is quote-unquote the issue. That's where I would focus my time and efforts towards, is fixing my titles and fixing my thumbnails. So that's the click-through rate issue. If your channel is getting a reasonable amount of impressions, but the click-through rate is subpar, then you need to focus on click-through rate and just focus on that solely. Now, the next part of the tiered system is average viewer duration. So now you've got impressions down, now you've got the click-through rate down, and you're getting views. The average viewer duration, that kind of depends on, the content of your video, which you technically do have a direct control over, right? The content of your video, it's actually what you're filming and such. So if average viewer duration, we're going to write down here actual content of your video. This is what's truly going to deem whether or not the content of your video is good, because if you're getting impressions and people are clicking your title and thumbnail but they're dropping off, let's say your average viewer duration is very low. So ideally I do try to aim for an over 30% average viewer duration on my videos. If that does achieve over 30%, then you've got a solid video and you've got a solid channel. However, if it falls under 30%, and you'll have to do the math when you look at your upside down triangle, because this says 4 minutes and it's not given as a percentage. But ideally, with my videos, it's not that I'll take down a video and re-edit it and then re-upload it. What I'll do is that I'll analyze the video and make improvements on future videos. So that is the tiered system when it comes to analyzing your YouTube channel and trying to figure out what to do when your YouTube automation channel isn't growing. Is the problem, where is your issue? Is it impressions? Is it the click-through rate? Or is it the average viewer duration? So by you thinking this way, in which you think of YouTube as a tiered system, and rather than instantly thinking that the problem is click-through rate, really look at this upside down graph, and how you access it is through your YouTube analytics. Rather than thinking that the problem is your content of your video, really look at your graph, because throughout all the calls that I've ever gotten on with my private calls with students, usually the problem is their impressions. They're not getting impressions. They pay for tweaking their thumbnails. They pay an artist to create a brand new set of thumbnails, but in reality, they're simply just not creating content that is searchable. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to a call with an individual who's not creating searchable content, and searchable content comes from the keywords in your title and description that people are actually typing onto YouTube. So really consider this upside down graph. And with that being said, that's all I have for this video, and my recommendation for what to do when your YouTube automation channel isn't growing, it's to simply analyze this graph. So that's all I got for this video, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. If you're interested, do join my private Patreon community group where I'll be getting into calls. You can hop on a call with me to kind of diagnose your channel and such. But if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, do leave them down below as well, and I'd be more than happy to answer them. So thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.